Okay, people. So, welcome to a new episode of Echoes from the Void. And today I'm joined by Michael Bayer, who is director, producer. I guess you wrote it as well, right? It's your new documentary series, Vanished, the Heather Elvis Case.
Yeah, it's not really. I guess you can't write a documentary, but I mean, I definitely, came up with what parts of it to investigate and to concentrate on. So yeah, and thank you very much for having me on today, Kevin. And I look forward to talking about what all went into making this film. What I learned from it. All the experiences I had. So yeah, I'm excited to talk about it. Thanks for having me on.
Hey, no worries at all, man. When Kelly hit me up, I was just like, man, this sounds super interesting. Right? It's not a case that I'd heard of, So what was it that brought this to you? Why did you decide to make a documentary series about this?
What first originally attracted me to make a documentary about this case was the fact that one part of this case that really wasn't looked into too much was the online harassment that the Elvis family went through while this case was going on.
Mm,
So, right. So, for example, this story was pretty well covered. I mean, it was covered on Dateline a few times. It was on Investigation Discovery. 2020 had an episode about it. So, it was a very popular story. It had a love triangle, involved, and it was. There's a lot on the relationship between Heather and the person that she was involved with, and then the wife, and then that and Sidney Moore, who was the guy, and so like that's kind of what it was concentrated on. I didn't really get deep into that part of the story. I looked at it and I kind of saw, once I kind of dug further into it, I was like, you know what, there's a lot more into this. It's not a who did it documentary. It's not like, we don't know who was involved. The case is still open, so it's
mm.
still ongoing. I mean, we do have some people behind bars, but they're not. We don't know where Heather is. Also, we don't know if there's any other people involved besides the people that are right now in jail. They were arrested and convicted and charged on. I'm sorry, arrested, charged, and convicted on kidnapping, not murder.
Yeah.
And so there's just a lot to this case. It was just very, very dynamic. But one aspect I wanted to concentrate, to go back to your question, was the online harassment that they endured. I feel like this is a topic that it doesn't get a lot of coverage. I was talking to someone before. It's kind of fake news before fake news, because this happened around 2013, and into 2014, the end of the year. And, now people realize, look, there's a lot of clickbait. There's a lot of people that put things online that just aren't true at all, just to get attention, feeds into the algorithm. This is when, Facebook was just getting popular. So
Mm.
right. So there's a lot of, um, there's just a lot of information, or there's a lot to learn from this case in regards to that and how people reacted to it.
Yeah, I think that aspect of it was kind of nutty, right? There's the fact that you can put all the evidence out there and not get in trouble,
Right.
right? Like you think that's like obstructing justice or, some other things, but nothing, and just the thought of people joining these groups to disrupt them just seemed kind of insane. But then once you hear it, you're like, "Oh, yeah, of course people would do that." But I think back then, when social media was a first started, people were like, "Bought a donut for breakfast." It was just all stupidness like that. There was it wasn't what it is today. So the fact that someone had the thought to do this then is kinda crazy.
I agree. And it was really the fuel that was feeding the trolls and, all the people that were kind of getting involved and piling on into this was the perpetrators, were the people involved in, in the case. So they were the people that, real quick, do you want me to look at the camera or do you want me to look at you? I don't know which one would you?
Oh no, you're fine, man. Yeah, the view's fine.
Okay, cool. I didn't want to okay. Yeah. So, but yeah, so, the thing is the people who were really involved in this case and the perpetrators were the ones who also were jumping on and spreading these rumors and starting these rumors online. And, a lot of it in our justice system, you're allowed to see the evidence against you. So you can do, a discovery demand and get all the police records and all the evidence that are being used against you in court. Now, the prosecution and the police aren't going to go and put that stuff out there, and because they want to hold a lot of it back for the trials. They don't want you to know, right? So, but when you're giving it to the other side and they're going out and putting it online and only putting out what they want people to see to try to, put out a certain narrative, you kind of get where this needs to have a little more regulation and to be looked at a little different and how it can affect cases. And also with the jury system, you're picking a jury of your peers located in the town where the crime happened. So public opinion can be spread online. It can be social media. How can you miss it? Especially a very public case like this, people, they go and they say things online and they can get influenced by what they think and believe maybe isn't true. And they haven't seen all the evidence and they come to these conclusions prematurely. And so, yeah, I think that was what really drew me to the case. And I think this topic needs more attention to it, just like anything in politics and in any aspect of life. Social media is more than just, like you said, just some cute dog videos or cat videos like it kind of started out with in the beginning, or sharing, your birthday party with all your friends. It's, it can really be a tool for someone to influence public opinion or change perspective on something like a criminal case, which is very serious.
Yeah, no, it's nutty because I think it was Heather's dad at one point, or it might have been his friend Bill. They talk about free speech is great, but it can then also lead to, people spreading crazy lies. And I think that's the issue. Because I think you don't want to make these things where people can't talk, but it's just having, I think, either guidelines on, and especially when it comes to a law, you shouldn't be able to put the evidence that only you and the prosecution have. That's just some craziness that, you're obstructing justice at that point. Yeah. So you think if you're doing something like that, it's, don't collect 200 and go straight to jail. You know what I mean? But I think it's also the way we use it, which is we have to think about, because it's just like, I think people will say crazy things, but then educate people. You know what I mean? Like, use it to educate on what actually is the reality, because it's when you think about all the people that talk about the earth being flat now, right? There's so many documentaries and programs that actually debunk it. So, it's hard to really look at that as being a viable thing because there's so much information that shows what the earth actually is. So I think that's the way, things should be looked at. Like, if the truth is there, it's going to stop lies and foolishness a lot of the time,
No, I completely agree. But, to your point, I agree with you. That was Terry Elvis who said, look, First Amendment rights, everyone has this free speech, which is very, very important for all, for getting the truth out there. If you only let one side say, so, there is that fine line. It's hard to say, hey, look, this is where this starts, and this is where this stops. But, in a criminal aspect or in defamation of someone's character, and you're sitting there saying rumors that aren't true. I mean, there are laws already against it, but it's just very hard to combat because before, I mean, we're used to media companies who, are able to, be sued. You know what I'm saying? Like there's a
Yeah.
fee, New York Times or something like this. But when it's like all these people have access to publishing now, it's like it's hard to regulate. So
Mm.
I think there is an information war. I mean, so you have one side and then you have the other side, and then you have what people believe. And one side's trying to push their agenda, and the other side's trying to push their agenda, and kind of where things fall. But I think once the trials happened and people saw the truth that way in court, that's when people
Yeah.
start to wake up and say, hey, look, you know what? This is really what happened, or this was what happened. So it does come out eventually, but it's just those things get pushed, and there's a lot of hurtfulness because these things can go on for years. So, for example, in this situation, they were saying that, Heather's father and, sister Terry Morgan were involved in, her disappearance, and, she wasn't treated right and she was abused, and, Terry beat his family. He was in prison. I mean, all these, false rumors and stuff. But there's no way to, it's hard. The evidence hasn't come out yet. The trial hasn't come out yet. So there's years where this can circulate around. So yeah, I mean, in the documentary, we use some, examples of where, they took, somebody. I mean, I'm not saying, they don't have evidence of who put the, the videotapes out there that say, hey, look, Heather didn't have a good relationship with her father, but, she was, her roommate was investigated by police. She was saying that, look, she thought she was kicked out of the house, but didn't end up being true.
Yeah.
But, the police are just getting started. Next thing you know, stuff's flying out online, and there's all these comments in the comment box, and it's just like, what's true and what isn't true. I mean, that's how things get started, and rumors get, fly off. And that's kind of what happened in this case. So I think bringing awareness to that is something that people can see. And not only, maybe not just for making new laws, but also, so when you read things online, before you kind of just start believing them, you just kind of say, hey, look, where's this coming from? What's the source? What's true, what's not true.
Oh man. Yeah, I feel I probably sound like a broken record because I've said it so many times, but I think it starts at school. It starts at school. There should be
Yeah.
classes on communication,
Yeah.
right? On how we interact with people. Because then you just it cuts so much stuff out, right? Because once you do this, and it should be several times a week, the class, right? Several times a week throughout every year of school. So you know how to talk to the opposite sex, how to talk to your friends, what to believe, right? To understand just because people have got pictures of shiny cars and big houses doesn't mean it's actually theirs, or it doesn't mean they're actually happy, right? No one's putting out their shitty days. They're only putting out the highlights, right?
Right.
So it's getting people to understand these things, and then we can navigate life in a far better way. But I think if we did that, that would be a big help,
Yeah. I mean, even to your point, like, it is amazing because social media, you can I mean, people put, you start seeing, hey, this person looks like they're living the best life, and they have, and all of a sudden you hear about, oh, wait, never mind, they got divorced, or, this happened, or he lost, person lost their job, and they're putting a whole lifestyle out there that isn't real. So, yeah, I mean, I think people have to take with a grain of salt, and also understand kind of what's on there is just, it's only putting a little slice of someone's life on there. So yeah, I agree. I mean, that's the thing about social, and then people are depressed because they look at that and they go, whoa, my life is, boring or whatever. You might think, I don't do all these cool things, and I'm not, driving around in all these cars and going to all these places, and which isn't true. I mean, the other person
Yeah.
has just as boring of a life as you. So yeah, that is the issue with social media. Definitely.
Mm. Well, yeah, I think, there's with a newspaper, right? When people spread lies in that thing, you have to print a retraction.
Right.
But the problem always with that is the retraction doesn't have to be the same size as the original
Right.
article.
Right.
Right? And
Right.
you can bury it on page 30 in a
Right.
tiny little square, but essentially, though, you printed it, but no one will have seen it because you buried it at the back of the paper. So I think there's always this issue with, dishonest information, that we still haven't quite figured out.
Yeah, and it's only getting bigger and bigger with the social media and everyone being able to post. But I do think that people are, more aware than they were, especially 10 years ago. I think that's
Mm,
why the story really did a good job of showing, this is when social media was just getting started. And it's like, how it just hit and these rumors have spread and like, the harassment and everything else and just spiraling. I mean, it just shows at that period of time, people weren't used to, deciphering over what information is real and what information is fake. And I remember even back then, I used to see something, whoa, and then now I'm like, if I see something, I don't believe anything I see anymore. I mean, and
yeah.
now we're getting into AI and deep fakes. I mean, some of these videos they're making they look real. I mean, so this is only getting more and more, pervasive and
Mm.
stronger. And it's going to be interesting to see where it goes. And I mean, people think about just, scams and, just voice. Someone can take your voice and completely talk and call your friends and say something. I mean, it's getting, people are going to have to learn a lot about deciphering between true and what's false.
Oh, for sure. For sure. I mean, like Brianna got fooled,
Yeah.
right? With what Heather told her, and, she'd been kicked out and all of this stuff. And then she finds out actually that wasn't true.
Right.
And I mean, that's the problem. It's just like, I think people sometimes you want to believe something. Certain things sound like they could be very plausible. So you're like, oh man, yeah, I feel bad for you. And it's just like, actually, that you didn't tell me anything true right there.
Exactly. I mean, I think she was using that more as just a way to get a place to stay. Hey, I'm going to come to my house
Yeah, of
with you.
course.
Right. And you know what? Like, and then that's how you're right. And then, hey, people start hearing that and then it just snowballs from there. Right.
Mm, yeah. Which I think what was fascinating about the documentary was because it's 3 parts, right? And a
Yes.
lot of the times, the first part of something is super interesting. And then the rest of it, you're like, I mean, they're just repeating themselves. You know what I mean? Like, what we didn't really need part 2, 3, 4, and 5.
Right.
Like,
Keeps
everything
going
was in
on.
part
Yeah.
1. But the way you laid it out and you drop those breadcrumbs, because then in part 2, we get these other aspects of the case, and you're like, whoa, the video of the car and just these other things come out. And then in part 3, we see a lot of the court case and these other aspects come out. So you're just like, this is crazy. Because watching everything unravel and how new evidence helped shine more of a light on what probably happened, the likelihood of the situation, just how like the camera footage shows, oh, he did use a payphone, right? Like they were burning things in the driveway, just all of these things. And it's super fascinating. Like,
Yeah. Yeah, we intertangled the case in with that, and it's always, from a filmmaking perspective, I mean, you have to keep people's attention. The story's a story, and you have to unravel it in a certain way where, you keep their attention, you get all that information there because this case had a lot of information. And it's a difficult story to tell because, there's so many aspects to the evidence. There's so much that was going on also while they're searching for Heather, while the case was pending, while the police were investigating. And then, how do you put that information out there? Like the part where Sydney and Tammy, their relationship, you had to understand their relationship to understand kind of who are these people? Why did they do it? What was their motive? Who can do something like this? That's not a normal thing. I mean, yes, there was, a love triangle, and your husband's running around and everyone understands that you're not happy about that. But, it takes a special, a certain type of person to then, go and act on that and, and do those things. I mean, 99.9% of people would have divorced their husband or, just left and, that'd have been the end or say some nasty things. But to go through, that takes, you have to understand her and the relationship between the two. So you have to have all these things in there to really understand the story completely. And I mean, also, like you said, the evidence of the case. I mean, there is no hard evidence in this case, not much. I mean, there's that picture that one of the family members saw of Heather, but other than that, it's all circumstantial evidence, or most of it's circumstantial evidence. There is no body. There is no, they don't have someone, caught red-handed. So all that circumstantial evidence has to come together and form a whole picture for everyone to really understand what happened. And yeah, I mean, it was a tough story to tell, and I watched the trial 3 times because, like, Sidney Moore, actually his first trial was a mistrial. So I watched it, the second one, and then the third one. And, even the prosecution, I mean, that's a tough one to put together. And to keep the jury's attention but you have all this circumstantial evidence that kind of comes together. Another thing is digital forensics played a huge role.
That's the crazy thing, because it's just like social media was detrimental in some ways, right? But technology as a whole is probably the thing that got this to where it got to. Because if it wasn't for the cell phone information, we might not have a case, So
no, we would not have a case.
Yeah.
We would.
So it's how you laid all of that out was just super because it makes sense the way, when you had the prosecutor talking and being like, why they couldn't try it for murder. Right. And, why these things happened. It really does paint a picture extremely well.
Yeah, and that's the thing. If there was, I mean, they would, if they didn't have that camera going down of their headlights on their truck. So there's certain things, and all the phone data as well. I mean, it would have been hard to put the pieces together. It'd been hard to explain to a jury. If this would have happened 20 years ago, I don't think they would have been convicted.
No,
it'd been hard. It'd been very difficult to prove. Also, I mean, that cell phone call, admitting to that cell phone call, I think was the biggest mistake they made in regards to, getting caught, which I think the detective, John Martin, did an unbelievable job in the first interrogation of Sidney Moore, saying, hey, look, we got this picture of you making a self, first he denied it, but once he heard he had a camera, he goes, well, they got me. Now I got to try to reverse my story. Well, once you're caught lying and then change your story, at that point, that's where the kidnapping part came in, because the luring of her using that payphone was very key in the prosecution's case in regards to tying them in. And all the other forensic stuff, like I said, it just had to come together. So you gotta take your hats off to the police in regards to putting all the forensics, the digital, the putting the cameras back in and washing the truck and all that stuff. It's like there's no hard evidence, but there's a lot of circumstantial evidence that kind of pieces everything together, which I thought was interesting.
Yeah.
It's on camera. A lot of it's on camera. A lot of it's digital. So the evidence is right there. So it shows, I've always said cameras are everywhere now. I mean, it's more difficult than ever than, to get away with a crime like this because of that.
Yeah. And also, stuff doesn't necessarily get deleted.
Nope.
You think it's deleted, but it's stored somewhere else, But so you had the idea to make this documentary. Why 3 parts?
At first I wanted to see if I could do it. Originally I wanted to make this it one, just a feature film, 90 minutes. Well, it was just way too much information to get down to 90 minutes. And then once I got going, I think you had to put in part 3, you had to put the part about Tammy Moore in there, showing her testimony. We could not interview Tammy Moore because we wrote letters to the jail or to the prison where South Carolina law is so that they do not allow inmates to speak to the press. Right. So it was impossible to get an interview from her. I think, I believe in, hearing from both sides of the story, like both sides. So, you're going to put out a documentary or you're going to show evidence, you're going to show a story, let the other person rebut it and tell their side of the story as well. I mean, you want to be as fair as you can. She did have a testimony where she was in court and she was allowed to refute all these, pieces of evidence that were used against her. and she didn't cross-examination. And, we have all that footage right there. So it's like an interview. And I think it was a very important part of the documentary to put that in there. And that takes up a good portion of, part 3.
Oh man, it was damning.
Yep.
It was crazy. I remember a show back in, I thought it was maybe mid to late 90s, Murder One. It was a US court show. It was a procedural. I think oh God, what's his name? Something Kelly. Cannot think of, he did Private Practice, I think, as well. I cannot remember his first name, but I think he did Murder One. And it was, the first season was great, but it was a similar kind of thing, right? This murder trial, and it all didn't look like it was going to go. And then the person took the stand, and their evidence really showed that they were a worthless piece of shit, right? Everything was lies. They couldn't hide their contempt and vitriol. And I think that was the case with her, is like, it, like just the Nancy part was just like, oh man, it was crazy, man. But knowing what to use and when to use it, like, how did you weigh that up, right? How did you kind of know, okay, that has to be at the end, or let's drop that bit now, and we don't need to play all of that, we'll just play this segment, right? How was breaking everything down for you?
Yeah, I mean, that is a very important part of making a film, is the storyline, and I really enjoy that part of the filmmaking process a lot, because that's where you tell the story. And you have, like you said, you have to keep people engaged. So if you tell them something before you told them something else, you're going to completely ruin the other thing that you want to keep them wondering on certain things. And then you got to kind of bring that in later, and you can't lose their attention. So you got to, like you said, you got to drop a few things here that are going to be told later and complete another, thread or another part of the story. And I do like how at the end it came together with, here's Tammy Moore, and all the questions that she's being asked, you've already heard about in part 1 and part 2. So she's just now giving her side of of that story. Now, which evidence do you use and what evidence don't you use? That's a huge, you can't put everything in there. You can only put the main stuff in, because people, if you just start jamming information into somebody, and you're going to confuse them. So they're just going to, oh man, I don't want to watch this anymore. I don't even understand the story, because there's just so much. So you want to keep to the main things. There was the hardest piece of evidence was that picture that Tammy's cousin saw of Heather being deceased. So that is that's one very important part. Another important part was the relationship between Heather and Tammy. She's saying that they had an open relationship, which wasn't true, and lying about it. And, and then after you come through and you're like, okay, why would she lie about being in an open relationship if there's no issues here? So why is she saying one thing to the public that it's open, but then behind closed doors, she's being abusive towards her husband, putting him in handcuffs to a bed, putting a tattoo on him, taking his phone, doing these things. So it contradicts, both sides. And then she went on the stand and they asked her these questions, and she's trying to refute it. But like, there's so much evidence against her that we displayed before, but you still need to hear her side of the story, I think. And like you were saying before, one thing I find very interesting about a jury trial in how people make decisions if someone's innocent or guilty, you can lay out all the evidence. I mean, people will see the evidence. Now, when you have someone sit down on a stand, look at 12 different people and talk, just the way they move their eyes or the way that their body's moving, the way their voice is, people come to their conclusions that way, those sub cues, if they're lying, if they're telling the truth, if they're credible. and if they're remorseful. I mean, these small things that have nothing to do with solid evidence, just how people behave on the stand, I think tells a lot if someone's innocent or guilty. And I think juries do rely on that a lot. So I mean, in the United States, you don't have to testify against yourself. So
No.
but yet, I mean, people always wonder, why aren't you testifying if you're innocent? So you always have that to go up against too. So it makes for it very difficult for someone to get away with something when they have to look at the people deciding in the eye and tell them, this is what happened.
Yeah. Well, I think the OJ case, right? That's a huge example because there was a lot of evidence,
Oh yeah.
but the police were straight racist, right? So if they're on the stand and everyone can see that these people are just dirty, the evidence then is null and void, right? Because it's just like, oh, well, they're definitely framing him because we can see they're racist.
You got it. Character and how people act, and if that's the way they're imagined, people like you or don't like you. Another thing is likability.
Mm.
If you're a likable person, people will then they make the decision emotionally and then they rationalize it. Like you said, I mean, if the cop comes out and he's racist and they have him on tape saying racist things, and he said before that he says he's not racist. Well, now people they believe. Yeah, right. Now it's like, well, what's the deal? And they just attack you.
Anything you say because we've just proven yourself to be a liar. So now even the legitimate evidence, we don't believe it.
Right.
You know what I mean? So
credibility is such an important part. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I agree.
Yeah. When you really think about it, humans shouldn't really be judging things because they are very susceptible to, all manner of things that don't really factor in,
But that's the beauty of our system. That's the beauty of the jury system. I believe in it. I think it's a great thing, and it doesn't get it right all the time, but we feel okay when the jury makes the decision, and we stand by it. So.
Yeah, well, that's the thing though, because it's just like, what else would you do, right? Because there's so many instances of crooked judges, so you don't want to leave it to one person. So you figure at least if there's multiple people, it should all come out on the right side of things.
Right. I mean, it's like sports. I mean, you could have machines do all the sports. I mean, people don't remember the whole thing with instant replay after a while. They're like, we don't like this. We want the referee to make the decision at the time. There's something, I don't know, there's something about how, like you said, I mean, you could have computers do it, AI do it, but there's something about having people do it and putting the emotional part into it and weighing other factors besides just the strict evidence or the strict rules and the flow of a game. I mean, football in the UK or soccer here. I mean, you see how the flow of the game goes, and when the referee, makes a bad call, usually they'll go make it up with making a different call later, and then there's a whole almost like a deals going on, with the game. So it's and the ref plays a huge role in it. And so it's the same. I think the jury. It's the same type of deal. People like when people make the decisions. It's not made by a machine or AI or anything like that. Same with that. Same with film. I mean, if you look at movies and film, I mean, everyone's like, well, AI is going to start making all these movies and that's it. We like to see an actor. We like to see a person. It makes a difference. There's something we relate with when we see other people.
Well, that's the thing, because I think, have you watched any of these AI movie clips?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
There's something weird about them, right? And there's a lot of times you'll watch it and you'll be like, this don't feel right. This feels so weird. And I think that's even when you're watching a film and they're using a lot of green screen, there are times when you can look at it and you go, no, that looks too fake. I can't believe in what's happening because this looks too fake. Even though, you know what I mean, it's people fighting a dragon, right? There's other scenes where you think like, no, I buy it. That looks great. And then there's that one bit and you're just like, oh, no, that does not work at all. I think it's just like we can be thrown out by things that don't feel right. Right? It that
Yeah.
emotional attachment that I think people need, and it can sway your opinion. So it's like when you see Tammy just come out with so much craziness, like they're not real handcuffs, it was emotional handcuff. It was just like, oh my gosh. Yeah. So
I
it's
mean,
just like,
you know, I give her credit for trying to explain these things, you know, but you know, but it's hard to explain a lot of this stuff, you know, and then you got all this stuff. It feels like digging a hole deeper and deeper and deeper. So.
Mm. I thought it was really good that you were able to get the guy from the jury to talk. You know, so we got the point of view from the jury, and like
That was a
what.
news clip. That was a news clip. We didn't talk to him. We had a news clip that we used.
Right. Okay, but that was great. That
Oh
was
yeah, to hear
that was a
that
good kind of
absolutely
bit
was
to
very
have.
important. I thought so
Mm,
too. Yeah. The fact that they had him talk, I thought that was important.
yeah. Now, because as you said earlier, right, that this story had been covered a lot of times in the States. So when you decided to do it, now it's the angle of the social media that hadn't been covered. But when it came to all the other stuff, was there an approach that you were thinking, okay, let's go at it like this? Because they haven't, the other stuff has been done a load of times, or they've covered that one bit. So let's take this evidence rather than this evidence. Like,
I think there's certain parts of it that were very important, that were in all episodes, like the main pieces of the evidence. We were able to tell more because we had a little longer form piece. So, and you know, you got to look at Dateline. I love Dateline. I mean, it's been around forever. I think they do a great job, but they come in right away. I mean, they don't have that much time to do a ton of research too, because
mm,
they're in and out. You know, they're doing a lot of episodes. So, you know, we don't. You know, we're concentrating on a fewer number. You know, I mean, we have other cases that we're doing now, but you know, at the time that very concentrate on this, we were able to dig deep, watch all the trials, go through all the information, find the best, you know, parts of the trials to put in, find the best evidence, go through all the records. I'm not saying they don't do their research, they do, but we have more time that we're able to tell
yeah.
the story in, so we can get further deeper into certain aspects of it. And then also, yeah, I mean, we concentrate on the social media aspect of it. I think that this wasn't covered. I think it was very important. Maybe it just wasn't seen as important at the time either, just because, you know, no one really thought of it. You know, I think that kind
Mm,
of now it's social media is, like you said, social media is not just some, you know, back then it was just looked at as, you know, funny cat videos or throw your birthday party up on there. We didn't know. I mean, now we know a lot of that negative damage can be done through social media, and this, you know, this story shows that. But I think that's why I probably wasn't concentrated on as much back then. So we did take a new angle, but yeah, there's certain things that were just in our story that were retold again that were important. I think one thing we didn't. I mean, a lot of the other segments wanted to concentrate on the love triangle and the conflict between, you know, Heather and Tammy, and that I didn't really see that. I mean, yeah, it's important and everything, but I really didn't see that as the most important part of the case. I thought the
mm,
conflict between the Elvis family and the Moore family was the bigger story.
yes.
You know, I feel like it was a love triangle, and I said this on many, you know, other things that I've been speaking on. She was 19 when she met him. She was 20 when she went missing. Um, he was in his late 30s. You know, at 19, you really just don't have an understanding of life, I think, to be, you know, it's more, I feel like she was more taken advantage of. And he was manipulating her as well, saying, hey, look, my wife doesn't care. This is open. You know, you don't have the experience in your life yet to understand that, you know, guys lie to you. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know, so, you know, that I think, and then, you know, so I feel like, you know, she was, you know, teamed up on, and they were much older, and, you know, she's 19 years old. So, yes, it was a live love triangle, and yes, it was an affair. But I mean, at the same time, I mean, you know, the other aspects of the story I thought were a stronger part to concentrate on. The conflict, I think, when after Heather went missing, then all the damage that went, done with the online harassment and all the conflict between the Elvis family and the Moores.
Yes, I was watching something the other day. It's a friend of mine had made a film called Ain't Hiding Nothing, right? And there's a moment in it because it's all about music and drugs and this kind of conflict. And there's this main character, Keys, and he's frustrated at his dad, and he's just like, "What? You never have anything nice to say. What's wrong with you?" And he's coming at his dad all aggressive, and his dad's just like, "What? Why don't you want to take accountability for what you do? I try and help you. I tell you, I give you advice, but instead of listening to me, you'd rather take advice from people with no experience." And you see the kid then realize, fuck, yeah, that's so true.
Yeah.
And I think that's the problem when you're young, that because she knows affairs aren't,
Right.
that's not good,
Right.
right? Or if someone like, oh, her friends have probably been lied to, right? Someone be like, oh, I'm not with my girlfriends anymore, but they really are. But you think that won't happen to me.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
That I think people can have. So you just kind of think, yeah, it's all going to be fine. Right. And I think there's that. So I as you said, he was older. So obviously he knows none of this is good. So
Right.
he definitely takes the lion's share of,
Right.
all of this. He's manipulative, right? You can see that. And just all the, like a lot of the prosecutors are like, I think, he's being like bullied by his wife, but I'm like, but he could leave, right?
Right.
It's
Right.
just, he's in more control than Heather. So I think
I thought
not doing that whole love trial, I think that was the best thing, to not focus on that.
that's why I
Because
did
the
that.
real thing was the family, right? The fact that the sister is helping Tammy, like, wash your car and do all of this other stuff. Like the way the dad came out at the police, that's like, all of that was super crazy and just interesting. That tells more of a story than, people having an affair, because we know people have affairs,
You
right?
hit on the
But it's
head, Kevin. You hit on the
everything
head.
else that was
Yeah.
like, whoa.
You hit on the head. I didn't want to concentrate on that. And I feel like that was concentrated on before. And like you said, you know it's wrong. I mean, when you're young, you do stupid things. I mean, I was young. I mean, I'm sure you're young ones too. So, I mean, you learn from those. You just hope
Mm,
that some of these mistakes don't, cost you dearly, in the long run. You just like, but at the time you don't even, you don't think, because you don't understand consequences yet. But once you're older, you like you said, I mean, the lion's share of the responsibility, I'm not, I felt like falls upon Sydney in that regard. And so like, that wasn't something I said, hey, look, whoa, like, this is the reason why she went missing and this. But the other parts of the story I felt were, how the cover up and how like his relationship was with his wife. And if you're not happy with your wife, leave. You know what I'm saying? It's
yeah.
that simple. And you're that age, yeah, no one wants to be divorced and, no one wants to go through all that stuff. But if you're not happy, you're not happy, like you got to take other alternatives. So yeah, I agree with completely everything you just said.
But I think you've got an interesting storytelling style, because I think sometimes you watch these kind of documentaries and it's telling you to think in a certain way, right? But you are just laying the information out there for the viewer to watch and, get an understanding of, oh, this happened and then this happened and, oh, that's not good, right? Like, where does that come from? You know what I mean? Like, how did your love of storytelling evolve?
I think it's something, it's funny. Storytelling. I worked in production for a while. So I worked in advertising for many years, making ads, making explainer videos, telling stories for companies, so I did that for a number of years, and then, I kind of got into the legal aspect later. I started, my brother's an attorney, and he kind of got me into that. And I started, business development consulting for law firms and lawyers. And so I got into, that. And then I've reached out into, true crime, storytelling. I think it's something you're born with for sure. I mean, it's something where, my grandfather was an amazing storyteller. I mean, he had crazy stories and was an amazing storyteller. So, you're born with it, but you want to show more than tell. I think that's kind of where you're getting at. And, you don't say, hey, look, this is what this is. You say, no, like I'm showing you all aspects of it. You can make your decision. Some people can see something and say, I think that's good, but someone might see the same thing, say, I think that's bad. And I think that's the important thing to do, is just show people and then let them decide what they think. You want to paint a picture and then allow them to come to the conclusion that they want. And another aspect, I think, of documentary filmmaking is, especially with true crime, everyone kind of got used to the formula where the movie's about who did it. Right when I walked into the room and I was interviewing one of the prosecutors, Nancy Livesay, she goes, "Okay, is this a who did it documentary?" Kind of rolling her eyes, like, no, it's not the storyline we're going with here. The storyline here is not really that. We kind of just want to show kind of how the case unfolded, what happened, show different aspects of life. And there's multiple different, it doesn't have to be who did it, good versus evil. It can be, the hero's journey. I mean, there's different types of storylines that you can use. But yes, I mean, you want to show people versus tell them. I think that's the most important part.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, also a big thing is you're not painting Heather like she's a saint, right? Because that's a thing. I think it's an issue, because whenever someone goes missing, right, someone is killed or anything happens, it's always, they were the best person in the world.
Right.
They wouldn't say boo to a ghost. They helped and you're just like, I don't think that's true.
Right.
But that doesn't matter. Right? They could be a cranky asshole. They still shouldn't have been murdered. Right? They shouldn't be kidnapped. They shouldn't be beaten up. They shouldn't be, right? You don't have to be a perfect person to, not warrant bad things happening to you.
Agreed. I mean,
so I think it's refreshing when you see something that just shows someone for who they are. Because I think in some cases, people might not have had the bit where she lies to Brianna. Right? They wouldn't include that. It's just like she went missing and she was great. She was a family misser, and then she's loved by everyone and blah, 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 which is, but the fact that, she was, she did lie to her friend, but that's to get attention. People lie to get attention.
Lies,
Young people do it all the time. Right? Older people do it too. You know what I mean? We're flawed. People in general have flaws. We're not 100% perfect. But that doesn't mean people can do bad things to you.
Agreed. I mean, there's no reason for anybody to go disappeared or missing for any reason of, for any reason, period. I mean, it's just, like I said, if you have a problem with something in this regard, what you're going to want to do is divorce, the person that, is cheating on you, and like you were saying too, I mean, especially when you're younger, you don't really, I mean, you might say a little white lie here and there to get, hey, look, I want a place to stay. I was kicked out of my house. Can I get a place to stay? You learn those things as you get older, that you don't need to say that. You can say, hey, look, you know what? I need a place to crash because XYZ, and I don't really feel like living with my parents anymore, or whatever else it is. You start to learn you don't need to do those things. But I agree. Yeah, it shows that.
Yeah. So yeah, like, it's laying everything out, but why 3? Like, what led to 3 pieces rather than 4 or 2? Or or was
Why
it
wasn't it longer? Yeah, I mean,
no, like yeah, like what led to 3? Was it just in the edit? It just falls into place where it's just like, actually, this fits like this,
that's how I
you
did
know?
it. That's how I did it. It just felt like that. And I was like, okay, boom, 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 3. Yep. I
Yeah.
couldn't take any more out. I could not take any more out. I looked at it, I said, you know what? If we take this out, we bring it down here, it's just not going to make sense. And he was, take this 10 minutes out. No, because like if they don't know this part, they're not going to understand that part. So yeah, that's just kind of where it ended up.
Well, it didn't feel overly long, right? It didn't feel overly long. It didn't feel repetitive. And I think sometimes with these things, like you can watch it and you're like, I mean, it's interesting, but we didn't need that middle chunk, right? It didn't need to be, I mean, Wicked. Like I get people love it, right? But I watched the film and I was just like, I don't know if you needed to split this into 2 parts. Like it felt very long. It felt very long. Um, but yeah, with this, 3 felt fitting. Like it felt like the information was spread the right way.
Thank you.
Right? Everything we got in part 1. And then in part 2, these new revelations come out, and you go into, the search and just all of this stuff. And part 3, you get a lot of the court case and the deposit and all of that. So it just felt like, oh yeah, no, this was structured perfectly.
I appreciate it. Yeah, I really appreciate it. It takes time. You just got to put time and you want to put effort and you want to take pride in your work. And yeah, I mean, it's a lot of it's time too. I mean, you just got to keep watching it over and over again. You're like, okay, maybe I should put this here. Maybe take a walk, think it over in your head. I mean, editing it's one of those things, but I do have experience in it. I've done it for many years. So like, it's something people can learn and you get better and better at it, but
Yeah.
it's time. You want to make sure and then you got to show people, hey, what do you guys think of it? Get their feedback and then redo it. So yeah, it's a process. Editing is a process.
But am I right that this was just your second documentary series though?
Yes, it's my second documentary. The first one that I did was like 10 years ago, and it was about bloggers. I kind of worked in that field before. That was kind of the field I worked in before. I worked with a lot of startup companies, and we did direct response ads, we did explainer videos for them. We did a lot of a bunch of different work for them, and that's kind of the world I used to work and live in. And then I got into law firms and this, and so now learn more about that. And that's kind of why I started True Case Films, a production company that specializes in these true crime cases.
Yeah. But, there is a difference, Michael. There is a difference, right? So let's not diminish what you've done here.
No,
You know what I mean? Because it's like making videos at work. It's like I've done that too.
Yeah,
right?
I agree with you. I put a lot into it.
Yeah, it's putting it all together, getting someone to say the right things, make it feel natural and not forced. Boom, boom, boom. It's doing that in the short form, but then taking that and telling this long form narrative and doing it in a way that's, because when you're doing it for let's say a law firm, essentially the audience, right? But with this, it's something that's got to connect with more people. So it's working it in a way. And also reenactments, right? Sometimes reenactments are terrible.
Agreed.
Terrible. But all of this, it did work. It really did work. Like the only thing I was a bit like it was like with the the trolls in the hoodies.
It's a little I get you on that. I get you on that. I get you on that. I'm with you.
But everything else, like the reenactments of themselves, they were good. It all worked well, right? And so being able to do all of this in just your second piece, that's a big jump, man. That's really great work.
I appreciate it.
You know what I mean?
I really do. And I will say this, the people that did the reenactments, the actors, they're amazing. You know, they did a really good job. I mean, they bought into the story and they really wanted to portray the story the best they could. You know, I had other people that worked, you know, Jeff Dean, he was my co-director.
Mm.
He did an amazing job. I mean, he's produced he was in a lot of music videos and stuff like that. A lot of the cinematographers, they did a great job. I mean, it was a team effort. It was positive energy when we were on set. You know, people bought into the story. They wanted it to end up the best possible. You know, the girl that reenacted and did, you know, played Heather Elvis. She did an amazing job. I mean, her name's Avery. She did a great job. You know, everyone. I mean, really, I take my hats off to them. They did great work because you have to get your cast to buy in. I mean,
Yes.
you know, and you have to get them to believe in the project and to want to do a good job. I mean, that's the thing about art and about filmmaking and movies in general. I mean, you don't want people working for a paycheck. You want them to actually want to make, you know, a good piece, you know, when it's all finished. And you want them to put their most into it because it's not easy. I mean, you know, when you're on set and hey, we're gonna retake this and do this and move here and smile a little more this way and move your head this way, look worried or look happy or look this way. I mean, you're just like barking orders at these people, and you know, you can piss them off, you know, if you do it the wrong way. And you know, so you want to do it in a way where they're buying in, and you know, it's a good working relationship in regards to that. And I found amazing people to do those reenactments, and it ended up good. I agree with you. Yeah.
Yeah. What did you have a certain technique to you know, I mean, engage with the cast to get the cast to, you know, get what was needed for certain scenes? Were there reference points that you gave them, films that, you know, be like, oh, if you watch this is what we're trying to do? Or like, yeah, what was your technique?
You know, that being positive on set, I think it's getting a good environment going, I think is very important. I think when people are tense and they're afraid of making a mistake, or you know, I don't want to do this right, or I don't want to do this wrong, and they're afraid to mess up. Another thing I did, and I think is very important, allow them to create it. Hey, look, here's the scenario. You guys, you go to town, you think how you would do it in this situation. I think we did a lot of that, and it worked. It worked great. It worked like the police, the one that played the detective. I mean, hey, how would you do it if you sat here in your desk and you're looking through video? Throws his feet on the desk and he starts, okay, this is the way you would do it. Great. And allow them. I mean, these people, they love what they do, you know, so get them involved and allow them to do the improv. And I think it worked out great that way. Just letting go of the control, is very important.
Yeah. What about with
the guys too? The camera guys, hey guys, you know, they're putting shots and, you know, thinking of ideas that I never even could have dreamed of, you know? So I was just kind of watching it all happen and, you know, hey, maybe try this or that, and it worked out. So it's a team effort. It really is.
Yeah. What about with the interviews? You know, because these people, they probably, as you said, there's been a load of documentaries already. So they've been asked a whole heap of questions in the past, right? So how do you make it that, you know, because if you're like, oh, another one being asked the same, we've already said that. So how did you approach them to get these really engaging conversations going?
You know, just as you would know too, I mean, you're a great podcaster, and you know, I mean, for these type of interviews, it's a little different because you have them on camera. It's a specific case you're talking about. You have specific questions. It's important to build that relationship before you're on camera with them. So get them, you know, open up, trust you, because a lot of people are afraid about getting burned. They're afraid that you're going to twist their words. I mean, this is like, for example, let's say you're interviewing a police officer or a detective. You know, here they are. This is their story. This is their career. This is their legacy. You know, people are going to see this. I mean, that's putting a lot on the line. And so they want to make sure that you're not going to burn them or twist their words or do anything like that. So the relationship part of what happens before the interview is just as important as when you interview yourself. Otherwise, they're just going to be guarded. Summer Dash was my co-producer on this. She worked in the local media in Myrtle Beach, and I approached her and, hey, do you want to do this? She did a lot of the interviews she did the interviews with the Elvis family. And then, and one thing I learned from her at the end of it, she opened it up. Hey, does anybody have any questions they want to ask? And people would think of great questions. So she was inclusive like that. She's an amazing journalist. I mean, she is an amazing journalist. She has a great relationship with that community in Myrtle Beach. Jimmy Richardson, the solicitor, or the DA is what we call in other states, really liked her. Hey, look, I trust Summer. She's going to tell the truth. She's not going to twist words. She's a that type of person. And I think that helped a lot. That really did, and she did an excellent job. The Elvis family too. They trusted her. So Terry trusted her, Debbie trusted her, Morgan trusted her, and that helped in that regard.
I mean, that definitely comes across. That
absolutely
comes across because they did not come across as if they were guarded. It all felt very relaxed, very natural. Yep. So yeah, she did a great job with that.
I agree. She's an amazing journalist. She really is. And she has years experience on TV. She was an anchor on TV, and she did a lot of reporting. And so she was excellent. And I'm friends with her. We became friends during this whole thing, and she's great. Really is. Yeah.
So were you just looking at the local news and that's how you stumbled upon her? How did you kind of go, she would be the one?
That was it, local news. And I stumbled upon her and I said, wow, I mean, she saw some interviews, looked at her resume. She had, she had her own website. She just seemed like a go-getter. And I called her up and, hey, do you want to do this? We set up a Zoom meeting, and I like her. I mean, I can see working with her, and she has an entrepreneur spirit. She's originally from San Francisco. So her brother works in startups. Her dad was in the corporate world, and just a go-getter type person, so not afraid to take risks, so right away. Yeah, let's do it. Okay. So I thought, it's a really, really, really cool girl.
Nice. Yeah. No, I think there is definitely an art to conversation. I mean, people think that you just throw questions at people, right? But it's not as simple as that, right? It's about, asking the right questions, taking the conversation in the right direction, knowing when things are just going in, spiraling. So being able to bring it back. There's so much in these things, so it's just being able to do that, right? Not everyone can. So seeing the way she was interacting with people, I thought that was very good. I enjoyed it.
And I'll give her credit, on this. And it's very hard to do in what makes a good documentary film. And I think you have to make it emotional. So, I mean, there's the facts and there's this, but I mean, it's hard to get people to to really get their feelings out there too. It's, it's like, how'd you feel during this? Tell me about the atmosphere. Tell me, she just did a really good job with, getting them to open up and so you could really feel the emotions of the story. And I think that's a very important part. And in these crime stories, I mean, they're extremely emotional. I mean, these are very high stakes, especially what these people went through. I mean, I can't even imagine, what the Elvis family went through editing and talking to them. I always just I just don't like the ending. You're just like, God, they're such good people. And you're just like, such a crappy thing happened to them. It's just like, you just wish it wasn't that way. And they soldier on, and they're still, like I said, the case is still open. And also another thing is, they want people to learn from this story. I talked to Debbie and I said, what do you want out of this? And she said, look, I don't want anybody else to have to go through what I went through, all that online harassment. I want people to see this. And also, I want people to learn from it. If online harassment, cyber stalking is huge in domestic violence cases right now. And I hope my story brings more awareness to that, because people now use social media to control someone that in an abusive relationship. Hey, where are you? What are you doing? Who are you commenting on? Who's your friends? who you hanging out with. It's like all your life is right there, and someone can use that information against you, starting rumors, so she wanted people to see this so they can bring awareness to that topic. So I thought that was
Yeah. No, because that was the thing, watching it and thinking, man, this must be difficult, right, for the family. So what are they hoping comes from this? I was thinking maybe it's just like someone's going to watch it and it might spark a memory, right? Where it'd be like, oh, actually, I saw, oh, fuck. When I heard that noise, that might have been, because that was on day. So I was thinking maybe in the hope of doing something like that, but also, educating people.
both.
It definitely makes a lot of sense.
Both. I agree. That's the thing. This happened 10 years ago. Maybe someone's younger then and didn't understand. Maybe they know more information. Now they're a little older and they're saying, hey, you know what? I have a guilty conscience, or I knew something. I didn't say anything because I was too young to understand it. Maybe at this time they come out and they say, hey, look, this is what happened. This is what I saw. This is, so the lot can happen when you put a spotlight on something and people start to talk about it more. You don't know. And not only that, now there's people going, maybe there's someone that watches it and goes to prison 5 years from now, is in the same cell or same whatever with Sidney Moore, and starts to, hey, I watched this movie. I know what this guy did, let me get some information out of him. So you don't know. I mean, things happen, you don't know.
Yeah. And it's like the ending, man. Like when the oh god, the cop that looks after the ground.
Yeah.
The ground, for whatever I can't think of the term, but
where he's
yes, and saw the car, and it's like, oh, it's my buddy. It says, oh, that was
just close calls, close calls, like, yeah. I mean, things like that.
Yeah, I was wondering though, if something like LiDAR could be utilized to look at that ground,
Who knows what they're going to do now in regards to that, just because, they probably have new technologies, and maybe it will get people to go back there and search a little harder. You don't know.
Yeah. Because like what cameras can do,
absolutely,
right? That you can see that there's a hollow patch 20 feet down now.
Right.
All of these different things. So it's just like,
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Now, working with Jeff, how was that?
Great. I've actually worked with Jeff I've known Jeff for 14 years, 15 years. We had a studio space in Los Angeles back then. We worked on a lot of projects together. I like working with him. He's one of my partners in True Case Films. So he's part of our team. He's very intelligent when it comes to, the production part of, there's a lot that goes into production, making sure all the equipment's there, making sure the right equipment's there, making sure the call sheets are there, lining it all up, so he's very, logistics. He's very good with logistics, and you need someone like that. I couldn't do without him. He's did an excellent job. Yep.
Awesome.
Kind of cameras and angles. There's all these things. I mean, he's good with holding a camera too, but I mean, he's more, he more wants to do more of the planning and get people to do that stuff too. But yeah, he's great. You can give him a camera and just say, hey, look, go film all this stuff. He'll do an amazing job. So.
No, it's definitely a fascinating piece, because I don't normally watch true crime stuff.
I really, really appreciate it, Kevin. I really do.
No, it's great, man. I really am thankful Kelly hit me up about this, because, as I said, I don't. My girlfriend, she loves true crime stuff. Like, I just find it makes me feel a bit sad and depressed, and I'm just like, I can't do it, man. So, watching something where you're engaged from the beginning, you're captivated, you're just locked in. Like, it really says something about the storytelling.
I appreciate it. I mean, and there's a little luck too. I will say there's a little luck. I mean, I had great people work on it. Things came together. You know, we got the right interviews. Like I said, Summer was a big asset. You know, Jeff and our post-production team, Brian. I mean, he's amazing, amazing. I mean, he's just a genius. I mean, he's designed like you wouldn't believe, and just being able to put the right, you know, breaks in there and the right, you know, transitions and everything else. And so, I mean, just a good team comes together with positive energy. You know, you can produce good content. And I
Oh,
think
for sure.
that's
Yeah.
where it really comes down.
Yeah. Yeah. So this drops on the 10th of
Yep.
March.
It'll be available on March 10th. It'll be available on Apple TV and also Amazon Prime Video. And it'll be available in the UK. It'll be available in the United States, Australia, and Canada. So English-speaking countries.
Tremendous. Tremendous. And you know, what is the feeling, right? Have you screened it anywhere yet? Like, have you done festivals?
We're screening it in on Thursday next week. You know, so we got that going. It's going to be more. It's a longer thing. You know, it's 3 parts, so it's hard to. You know, I am hopeful people are going to go back to movie theaters. It's something that I want to do. Like with our next documentary, it's going to be 90 minutes, and I want to have great Q&As. I want to make it an event. I want to get people back out of the house. Like I'm not like, hey man, streaming's it. Like we're just going to keep everyone indoors and everyone's just going to stream. You know, I do believe in the movie theater, but for 3 parts, it's a tough ask for someone to be there for 3 hours.
Yeah.
You know, so yeah, something like this is something they got to watch at home, or maybe watch 1 episode for 3 nights, you know. So
well, yeah, no, I was definitely after finishing one, I had to watch the next. It wasn't a case of like, I mean, that is the beauty of you know, a lot of streaming, that it's all there. Like, it's not, I've got to wait till next week now. God damn it. Like, it's just like, all right, where do we go now? So yeah, that was a great thing, man. That was a great thing. Right, so how can people keep track of everything that you're doing?
You can follow us on Instagram or Facebook at True Case Films. That's our True Case Films is our handle. So just type that into Instagram, or we can have it on the bottom of the screen or a link, and they can follow us right there when we release the movie, or if there's any like follow-up interviews or behind the scenes footage or bonus footage. We'll put it all out on our social media pages.
Tremendous. And do you know what might be next?
Yeah, we actually have 2 documentaries we're working on. One, we just finished the interviews. It's called The Dine and Dash Dater. It takes place in Los Angeles. It's about a guy who would go on these dating apps. He'd meet women, and he would say he's, you know, CEO, or he's a man of means. And then he would, you know, flatter them. And then he'd bring them to expensive restaurants. He'd order steak and lobster. He'd eat it really fast, say he had to go to the bathroom or take a phone call, and then he would leave. And he did this for 6 years. He'd leave the woman with paying the bill. And he would do, or I don't know about 6 years. I'm sorry. I take that back. I can't say 6. They don't know how long he was doing it for. A couple years at least. Right. He's doing it for a while. I didn't mean 6 years. I completely redact that. I don't know if that's, I don't want to get myself into trouble. But he was doing it for a while, and they finally, you know, the police caught on, because women were embarrassed. They didn't want to say, hey, look, this happened to me. But it was enough money where you just didn't really want to report it. A couple $100. I mean, it's a lot of money for a lot of people. It's not something that feels good, but it's not like hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars.
Yeah.
So that we have that all finished. It's in post-production. And then we're also working on another documentary about a guy named John Cruz. That was a case that happened in Dallas, Texas, where he died of a gunshot wound, and the police say it was an accident. They hired a private investigator, and they won in civil court a wrongful death. So they're trying to get the DA that now to bring murder charges, but there's a whole conflict going on between the two. So we want to dig into that story a little more and investigate it. And that's the next one we're working on. And we're working on it with John Lorden. That's the person that was in this film is the one we're working on the next one with.
Okay.
It'll be a good one. We're going to do a great job with the investigations. It's a lot to this story. It
sounds fascinating, man.
It is.
Sounds fascinating. Like, are we thinking next year?
Hopefully next year for this one. This first documentary Vanish took 2 years from head to toe to make. I mean, hopefully make them a little quicker now. We have more of a team. Once you go through the process, once you kind of find ways where you're like, hey, look, I wasted time here. I could have done this, I could have done that. So hopefully they'll come out a little quicker. Hopefully by the end of the year, Dine and Dash will come out, and then hopefully John Cruise will come out next year. So
awesome. Well, Michael,
don't hold me to it though. I don't. If it comes out, I don't want to say that. But
you up and be like, "Where's the docs? Like,
where is it? Where is it?" Right.
Actually, can I ask you one last thing just before I let you jump?
Sure.
Right, because dealing with this kind of topic, there must be like an emotional toll. Because you're reading through these transcripts, you're watching this video and just all of this. How do you deal with that? Right? How does that affect you?
It has me going to church on Sunday now. I can say that. It does. I mean, because you see negative, and the world's not like that. It's a very small percentage of people that are this evil.
Yeah.
We all have a little evil in us, but you know what I mean, on that level. And you're right. I mean, it makes you appreciate good people even more. So it does. I think it's tough to deal with. But I feel like the stakes are high, which brings attention more to the story and allows us to then use these stories to tell, teach important lessons and stuff like that. So you got to look at the positive that comes out of the negative. I think that's that's how I keep myself going in that regard.
Okay. All right. Well, Michael, I'm glad you're doing what you're doing because you're doing it very well. So mad props to you and your team because, man, I've thoroughly enjoyed this and I'm really looking forward to what comes next.
Kevin, I really, really appreciate all the kind words. It was an amazing podcast. It was great sitting down with you, and we do have something coming next. We'll reach out again, and I appreciate the talk, and it was amazing. And we'll keep in contact.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it. And I thank you for the words earlier when you said about the podcast. I appreciated that, man. Thank you. But people, March the 10th, right? Mark it down on the calendar. We'll have all the links on the website. So you'll be able to go, Apple, Amazon, YouTube, watch the doc, right? Be able to do that and support Michael and the team at True Crimes Films. So people go do that, show some love, and just ingest this really interesting story. So Michael, again, thank you so much for your time, man. Really appreciate it.
I really appreciate it, Kevin. You have a good one.
Hey, you too, man. You too. Take it easy.
All right.
Bye.